Hello and welcome. Today I'm actually doing a second video. I'm going to show off my random map script pack, which you can get in the mod workshop. Just browse for mods, then search for a random map, and then you could search for, say, Zetnus. And you'll see... Alright, actually I'm looking at my installed mods, but if you browse the mods you'll also see this. Yeah, there we go. That I have a couple packs here, actually. I have the Ludicrous Resources pack, which is something I made for the HD edition. It's basically all of the standard maps with massively boosted resources. So if that's your thing, subscribe to that. I have a Michi map, which is just a map where forest completely separates the players. There wasn't one for DE, so I made one. And I have my Hyper Random, which we'll look at later in the video. But what I actually want to show at is my map script pack. It has a bunch of different maps that I've made, a lot of which I made previously and I've now ported to DE or remastered for DE is the right way to put it. And if you want to get it, go subscribe here. Also, I'll add any new maps to that and you'll get them automatically. So if you want to test them, the easiest way is not to do a standard game, but rather to go to the editor. And you can set up a scenario. And you can actually test maps in the scenario editor. So let's add a few more players. Let's say 4 players, and we'll even set up some teams. So player 1 and player 2 can be allied, and player 3 and player 4 can be allied. That way, if there are any roads, they'll actually show up in the scenario editor. You know, roads between team members, for example. And you'll want to select the size you want. And then you can look for my maps. Now, all of my maps start with the ZN@ prefix. And that's because, well, the official maps used to be ES@, so I just followed that naming convention and named them ZN@ for Zetnus. Now they use an underscore, but I've kept it. So we'll start with BF Rivers. That's Black Forest Rivers. And which version? I have 2 versions, of course, yes. So Black Forest Rivers will look something like this. It will have little trees along the coast to block you from walking along the coast. You'll have a clearing. There'll be connections between players. There'll be road connections between team members, non-road connections between players, and there'll be some neutral islands that might be filled with forest or have some resources on them. Forest shapes are a bit random. It's not super fair. It can be unbalanced, but it's, you know, people love Black Forest type maps. People love this type of map. It's a casual map. Good fun. And I put in a bunch of biomes, so you'll have, you know, mixed forests. Here we have sort of a more temperate forest. Here's, you know, the neutral island actually has some resources on it this time. You might end up very crowded. You'll notice this one has a heck of a lot of resources. This is because I have 2 versions. This one is the Ludicrous Resources version, I believe, and the other version is the one with the more standard-looking resources. So I offer both versions because it's such a popular map and people like both versions. Here's an autumn version. Autumn trees are new to the definitive edition. You won't see those in HD. And actually, these reed trees that I put on the coast are also a new thing. All right, so let's move along. So we looked at both the Black Forest Rivers. Then I have your Forest Nothing teams. Now, there are a couple other Forest Nothing maps on the workshop that you can use. Mine, the specific gimmick, I suppose, that it clumps the players by team. So you're closer to your team members than you are to the enemies. You'll also start in a small clearing. I used to start you with a packed town center. I think I've patched that out now, though. If I haven't, I'll be updating that soon, and just to give everyone a TC. That's more fair than starting with a packed TC, because those you'll end them up off grid, and then you can't place farms and so on. So that's Forest Nothing for you if you want to play that type of thing. Here I'm going to show you Frontier. This is a cool map I made for HD at the time. Basically, it has a couple different biomes, all completely filled with trees, but the trees are all spaced. So, you know, you start in the middle with some transport ships, a little boat to scout with, some villagers. So you have to go find a place to settle. All the resources are in these hot spots that are filled with wolves, but you'll also find like scattered individual piles of resources in the forest as well. And you have to chop your own clearings. You can palisade to delete trees if you need to, but it's just another fun exploration map. Nothing competitive, but could be great for free-for-alls. Then I have a single-player version of that, which you'll want to use if you're playing against bots, because bots don't do very well on nomad-style maps. So what this does, it gives every player a starting place on an island or a land, except for player 1. Player 1, being the human player, has to go settle somewhere, but the AIs already get a starting town with some stuff set up. I might actually improve this in the future as well with the new DE stuff some more. Then I have Glacial Springs, which I made for one of the contests recently. Here the gimmick is that you're starting on, mangrove shallow terrain actually. And you have these shallows that run from the inside to the outside, back to the inside, all across the map in a very regular looking pattern. That's basically the main gimmick. And you have some cool terrain mixing and so on. Moving right along. Gold Rush Forest. I don't think I have that one in the pack yet. I believe that one I still need to update this one to put it in. That's still coming. Hidden Lake, that I also made for the contest. Basically, this one was actually designed to be reasonably competitive. So you have your starting town, you start with one pile of fish close to your starting town. Everything else is reasonably standard. And then you have these shallows that lead to the middle where there's more fish. You can't wall to the center because there's the unbuildable terrain here. You also can't wall to the edge because there's the unbuildable rock cliff there. But you have a very nice trade line along the edge. It's just hard to protect it, which I thought would be good for competitive gameplay. Yeah. This is a very standard map. It'll always look roughly like that. Then let's take a look at, we're going to do hyper-random last. Let's look at King of the Hole. Now, King of the Hole is actually one that I have special recommended settings for, and my recommended settings are to play this with 8 players on a tiny map, and with King of the Hill, because the hole here is filled with outlaws, wolves, lions, monkey boys, iron boars, all kinds of baddies. And these trees here only have like 10 wood, so chop through at your own peril once you're ready to grab the monument, because these Gaia units will attack your villagers. And when you're playing on a tiny size with 8 players, you also are much more cramped, and it's an absolute slugfest for this hole in the center. I made this for friends, basically for fun, because we were playing Socotra on Tiny. I thought, what can I do that's similar to that? Moving right along, I have Lake Nomad, where I once again have a single player and a multiplayer version. The MP is the multiplayer version. And you start on a lake. You actually start on a tiny piece of shallow, load up your transport ship, and land it somewhere. All the lakes are connected. And, it has some very different layouts. It's a nomad start. There won't be wolves or anything anywhere, but all the resources are fairly spread out. So you should have a decent chance everywhere you land, although you'll have to look a bit to find a good spot. And then I have a single-player version of this too. A couple of different biomes I included. The single-player version is just like the other single-player version thing that we did. Player 1 has the same start, but all the AI players start on shallows that are directly connected to land so they can easily find a place to build. Which means that this map has a heck of a lot more shallows than the non-single player version. Then we have Mesas. So this is one that I made as a request a long time ago. I'm also using my own original Cliffs mod. Get that if you want. You can find it. Just search for classic Cliffs. Overall, pretty standard resources. The wood is filled with cliffs along the outside. That's the cool gimmick. There are also two types of generations, because this was actually used for ECL. I made a version specifically for that, which has a 50% chance of occurring now in this combined version. And the ECL version has no cliffs in the middle, but instead has more forest in the middle. So the combined version has a chance of generating like the ECL version or like the old version. That's ECL. That's the old version, where you could also have cliffs in the middle. Then I have Meteor, which I also made for this contest, for the Spring Brawl contest. And this is a fun map. It's basically Gold Rush. But you have this smoking meteor in the middle, which looks cool. And these patches of burning stuff. I just wanted to make a cool looking map. Also, something I've done with all my maps is your three villagers and scout start on all different sides of the town center, because by default there's actually a bias, and I wanted to spread them out a bit more. Your wood is all on the outside. I mean, it is basically, it's just a thematic Gold Rush. It's a more cool looking Gold Rush. Then I have, I can show you Michi. This has gone through a couple iterations. The most recent version has very clean edges. It also doesn't have these forest clumps here. They don't go to the edge, so you can already set up a trade line pretty early with no major interruptions. Other than that, team members are always together. Teams are separated. If you play free-for-all, you'll have a bunch of different forests. You probably want to pick a bigger map size, though, for that. I also boosted the number of resources you start in with in general, so that you're well set up, because Michi players tend to like to have a lot of resources. Although this many cows does seem to be a bug, potentially. I'll have to look into that. That seems like a lot to me. I also have different biomes in it. Oh no, it is the amount that I suggest that I had set up. And I did a couple. I also do forest mixing. You saw that on my Black Forest Rivers as well, where I've just mixed trees from different types of forests to make a nicer looking combined forest. Yeah, there's an African one. All right, let's move on. This is just my fixed version of Nile Delta, with the difference being that it can spawn in any of 4 rotations, rather than just with the upper rotation. This is sort of what the default Nile Delta looks like. Most of the other fixes that I did have now been incorporated into the official Nile Delta. Ring Nomad. This one was actually used in Spring Brawl. It's like Lake Nomad, but actually competitive. You start in a lake, load your guys onto the transport ship, and get going. The center has more densely spaced resources compared to the outside, but you'll probably want to take control of both. Some fishing and so on. Then, ring nothing. It's a joke, but it is actually in my random map script pack, so you can play it if you want. I haven't played it. Yeah, it alternates the 4 different resources in rings all the way throughout the map. Yeah. Starfish. I made this one for Spring Brawl as well. You should play it with 5 people if you want to have a 5-fold Starfish. But basically, you have your little inlet that gets deeper and deeper as it goes in. You have some fish in your area, and then lots in the middle. And then you have forests on the outside, and so on. So it's just a bit of a different take on, say, a Baltic or a Mediterranean type map. With the gimmick being, I guess, that you can dock very close to your town center, although you won't get that many fish there, so it might actually be worth running out and docking out here instead. Uplift Nomad. Oh, this is another gimmicky one that I put in. So there was a bug with the elevation generation, a legacy bug, that elevation tends to generate in the south. Normally you don't see it that much, but here I set it up specifically to really accentuate that issue. So it generates in the south, and you have a little bit starting to generate in the north. This bug was was fixed in DE, or there was a new scripting attribute that you can use to fix it. But I made this just using that bug to show off what it was like before. It's nomad. You start in the lowlands, which have lots of food of all different types, but only little piles of gold and stone. And if you move out, there's more gold and stone up here, and only small amounts of food. So you have to choose where you want to settle. And Water Wars, yes. This is another one that actually turned out to be surprisingly popular. It was difficult to do properly in HD because I couldn't space the starting lands equally. Now I can in DE or with UP. So depending on how many players you have, the spacing will be different. With 4 players, it'll always be in the corners, I think. Yeah, that's why I set it up. You start with some sea towers, 1 relic, a town center with huge nodes of each resource. These are massive piles of gold, stone, wood, and berries. Also, this wood can't be accidentally palisade deleted because there's a little stump unit here. So it can't be lamed. And you start with a few just standard things. Monk boat as well that you can use to scout with or to try and convert enemy units, enemy boats. I also added the coastal reeds to prevent running around the outside and building docks on the outside. And there's a central island with some extra gold and some neutral archers. I don't know, this map always did well. That's why I was one of the ones that I remastered early on. It's just a heavily focused naval map. Yeah. And that's all the ones that are in the pack right now. I will add more later on. So about that, actually, let's take a look at what I have for the HD edition. Because I have a whole bunch of map scripts for the HD edition, many of which I have not ported. They don't really need porting. They would work one-to-one, but I want to remaster all of them. So all the ones I've included are remastered. So if the ones here that you see that you'd like me to remaster, let me know in the comments so that I know which ones I should focus on porting next to say, well, when I have time. I've been pretty busy, otherwise I would have done them all already. So, we have Kraken here, Swamp, we have the Antarctica. That was an April Fool's joke of mine. Any wall arena, that's arena with any walls, including stuff like aqueducts. And if we go back, Forest Maze, Sea Arena, Microphone Migration. This one, Nile does we already have. Best of 4 Worlds. Spectator Arabia we don't need anymore, because DE actually has good spectating stuff. This was when spectating was completely broken in HD, that's why I made that then. Mesas I've ported. Water Wars I've ported. Cliffscape I could. That's a couple different maps using cliffs, which do cool things. Lake Nomad I've done. Gigawood, that's not a map, that's the opposite of small trees. That's big trees. I could port that as a joke at some point. Might be fun. Deadwood Forest, that's sort of a semi-dense forest with lots of dead trees. Then I have Z-World, that's just like a bunch of different islands on the outside, island in the middle, bit of a reverse migration type thing. Cheeseburger, that's just inverse hamburger. Gravel Pit, just a map with a lot of stone. Floodplain, that's actually my very first map idea. Bunch of shallows everywhere. I could remaster that with, say, mangrove shallows. Forgotten World, that was just Nomad to show off the forgotten animals and so on. Frontier, we saw. Hunger Games, that's a battle royale type map. Fight to the death in the middle or migrate to the outside. Then we have Stony Shores, a bunch of scenario editor tree. It has a bunch of eye candy in it, is the right way to describe it. Pangea, that's actually one that I want to do soon. It's because I can, with the perfect circle placement from DE, make that one much better. It's sort of like a type of Michi or forest nothing, but you have to connect it to the outside to the water while you're chopping your way inward. That's a fun map. Desert Oasis, pretty heavy desert map. Deepwood Forest, that's like the Deadwood Forest except with different types of trees. I have ported this map pack. Black Forest Rivers we already saw. Palisade Arena, I don't know if there's that much interest in that, but maybe. Hidden Valleys, where you're surrounded by one layer of trees to start with. Sea Blood, well, that's a custom scenario I made, but I have already uploaded that. Gold Rush Forest, I showed it, but that's one that was still a work in progress. It's not officially remastered yet. Cliff Maze, Team Causeways, that's just Team Islands with connections. That was actually used for ECL as well. And this is just a funny thing. It looks like CBA, but it's actually random. Probably don't need to port that. What else do I have sitting around? Oh, Berry Michi, Stone Michi, Gold Michi. Yeah. So, if any of these maps tickle your fancy, let me know. And I might prioritize porting that map to DE or remastering it for DE. And finally, I guess I'll show off Hyperrandom too while I'm at it. So let's close this, switch back to this, and I can even show my current working build of Hyperrandom. Basically, that's just a huge script that can be all kinds of things. It can be them at random. It's not like Mega Random. Mega Random is several hundred maps, and it chooses randomly from them and then randomizes the resources on that. This just takes the different parameters for lands and randomizes those. So you can have a central land, it can be small, medium, or large. You can have corner lands, they can be small, medium, or large. You can have player lands. So all kinds of silly generations. Okay, something is slightly amiss here, I think. May have broken the scenario editor. In any case, I know a lot of you have probably taken a look at Hyperrandom. I also, well, in the release version, I offer two preset builds, Hyperrandom and Hyperrandom Lite. And Hyperrandom Lite always has standard resources. In the case of Nomad, it will have standard Nomad things. But it will have, your standard amounts of all the resources. It won't do unequal lands between players and so on. But it will still have all the biome variations and so on to make it interesting. So that's all. Thank you for listening, and do subscribe if you've found this interesting. All right, bye-bye.